Should you become a financial examiner in 2021? In this video, we're going to go over some of the pros and cons of choosing this particular occupation. We're going to go over salary, job market statistics, educational requirements, and more. It's actually a pretty interesting occupation. Not too many people know about it. So what is a financial examiner? Financial examiners enforce and ensure compliance with laws and regulations governing financial institutions. Often they are examining, verifying, and authenticating records. Ever since the great financial crisis, there has been more regulation of our financial institutions. Financial examiners try and prevent fraud in different financial institutions, and they're really trying to prevent borrowers from being misled. Often they're reviewing balance sheets, operating income, and expenses. For financial examiners, there are two main areas. The first being risk assessment, where they're evaluating the health of financial institutions. The other main area is consumer compliance. In this area, they're monitoring lending activity to ensure borrowers are treated fairly. Often financial examiners have to have an accounting background. Typically, to become a financial examiner, you would do the following. You would get a high school diploma, complete a bachelor's degree with coursework in accounting or finance, pass any necessary licensing exams, and then find a job. To get more technical information about this occupation, check out these two Coursera courses. The first course is titled Economics of Money and Banking, and it is offered through Columbia University, an Ivy League school in the state of New York. The second course is Forensic Accounting and Fraud Examination, offered through West Virginia University. Both of these courses are less than $100. For more information about those courses, check out my links in the description below. So as I was describing earlier, it doesn't require too much education beyond the bachelor's degree level to become a financial examiner. In fact, according to the Occupational Information Network, 87% of financial examiners had a bachelor's degree, 9% had a bachelor's degree plus some kind of certificate, and about 4% had a master's degree. So you don't really need to go beyond the bachelor's degree level in this particular occupation. The other thing you really need to understand about this occupation is that so many of the job titles aren't financial examiner. In fact, there is so many different job titles related to this particular occupation. All of these job titles are types of financial examiners. There are anti-money laundering officers, bank examiners, Bank Secrecy Act officers, compliance analyst officers and specialists. There's credit union examiners, examining officers, and internal auditors. And there's probably even more job titles even beyond this list. So when you're doing your research into this particular occupation, definitely look for these specific kinds of job titles in Indeed or Glassdoor or LinkedIn, because if you just type in financial examiner, it really won't give you that many job postings, whereas there's a lot more job postings when you get really specific. Next up, we're going to talk about the compensation of financial officers. In 2020, financial examiners did pretty well. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they had an average base salary of $92,730. This was more than insurance underwriters, bank analysts, accountants, and cost estimators, but it was less than actuaries, economists, and personal financial advisors. We can also look at the wage growth of financial examiners over time. In the year 2000, the average base salary for a financial examiner was $58,480. This rose to $92,730 in 2020, giving us about a $1,600 wage growth on average every single year. Unfortunately, in the past 5 years, wage growth has slowed down a little bit, really to just about $740 a year from 2015 to 2020. And I do want to emphasize this is base salaries. Financial examiners actually have multiple forms of compensation. Financial examiners typically are entitled to base pay, a bonus every year, benefits, and potentially overtime wages. So if we were to look at total compensation for a financial examiner, assuming the average national base wage, you would add in a bonus of maybe $6,000 a year and $22,000 worth in benefits, would bring total compensation to a little over $120,000 in a year, assuming 40-hour work weeks. And also keep in mind the average national base wage is not even across the entire United States. There's certain hotspots for people in this particular occupation. In fact, in Washington, D.C., the average base salary for a financial examiner is a little over $162,000 per year. And these financial examiners are probably most likely working for the federal government, meaning they have really solid benefits. Another great state for people in this particular occupation is the state of Massachusetts, where the average base salary is around $120,000. Same as New York, we're also around $120,000 a year as a base salary. But also keep in mind these three areas have a pretty high cost of living. Compensation you can expect working as a financial examiner. Next up, we have the job market. What is the job market like for people in this particular occupation? When you look at the size of the financial examiner workforce, it's about 68,000 people. And this is much less than the number of employed accountants and auditors, financial analysts, insurance sales agents, loan officers, and more. A workforce of around 68,000 people means this is actually a pretty small occupation related to other big ones like being an accountant and auditor. Because the workforce is smaller than a lot of other similar occupations, this means that you would be getting a skill set, developing knowledge in something that you might only be able to use in certain cities, states, and metro areas. We can actually get a geographic view of where all the financial examiners are employed all over the United States. The tri-state area, the state of New York, has the greatest number of employed financial examiners, with over 11,000 of them residing in the state of New York. This is followed by Texas, California, and North Carolina. But in this particular map, the darker the blue the state, the greater the number of employed financial examiners reside in that state. Another interesting thing about this occupation is that for years before the great financial crisis, the number of employed financial examiners was pretty flat. In the year 2000, there was around 23,000 to 24,000 employed financial examiners. By 2012, around 28,000. But as you can see, right after the great financial crisis, the number of employed financial examiners grew and has been growing every single year since about 2013, 2014. From 2012 to 2020, the workforce has more than doubled. And by 2020, we get to around 68,000 employed in the workforce. And this makes sense. The great financial crisis in the United States really made people question how trustworthy these banks are. So people have been more in favor of regulating big financial institutions to ensure borrowers are safe, their money is safe, and they're not being taken advantage of. So that covers the job market for financial examiners. Next up, would this occupation be compatible with your personality type? A lot of people like to take the popular Myers-Briggs personality assessment and try and figure out their personality type. According to the Myers-Briggs company, there are certain personality types that are really attracted to this particular occupation. In fact, the ENTJ, also known as the commander, is the most likely Myers-Briggs type to go into this particular occupation. This is followed by the ESTJ, the director, the persuader, the ESTP, and the ISTJ. So all four of these occupations have a high chance of choosing to become a financial examiner. Notice that all four of these have a preference for thinking over feeling, and 3 of the 4 have a preference for sensing over intuition. So as you can see, there are pros and cons to choosing to become a financial examiner in 2021. You could be working to prevent the next great financial crisis, or trying to unearth some bank that's acting inappropriately, trying to mislead or take advantage of their borrowers. If you enjoyed this video, definitely also check out my accounting video and or my consulting video. Both of these occupations are also great picks if you're interested in becoming a financial examiner. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.